In today's video, I'm going to show you how to copy a sleeveless t-shirt, and I'm actually doing this for my daughter. So my daughter, it's almost Christmas here at time of filming, and I've got into the habit recently for Christmas and birthdays of making my daughter some things, not only because I'm terminally broke, but also because it's really nice for her to have things. But we always tend to sort of organize it last minute, and if she needs to give me something, like she needed to give me a t-shirt to copy, unfortunately, I don't get to see her that often. She lives a long way from me, so we tend to meet in London. We were meant to meet a few weeks ago, but then the trains were a mess, so we only met about a week ago. And so I've got about 4 days before Christmas. Of course, I'll have to post it to her, but she's pretty understanding and she doesn't mind if things are late. So I'm going to get on with it this weekend, see if I can get it done in time, and then see if I can send it to her in time, because she will also be going away for a couple of days at Christmas. So I don't want to post it if she's not going to be in, so I have to sort all of that out. So this is the t-shirt she has given me. It's very gothic, and yeah, what can I say about it? Okay, so it has got it's sleeveless. It's very straight cut here. It cuts down very low. It hasn't got, you know, a tight curve on the armhole, and then it's got almost a it's a band here, but it's almost like a mock neck, which I think she likes because it comes up too high, but it's not restrictive like a polo neck. So that's the only thing I'm a little bit uncertain of. So there's certain rules about how you calculate neck bands in order for them to lie flat. But of course, this one's not meant to lie flat. So we're going to do a little bit of experimenting. I've bought some plain black fabric here. So I'm going to make her more than one. I'm going to make several colours, but I'll do one first of all in black and send that off to her and see if she likes the fit. Now, when it comes to the armholes, I get very fed up with these. Some of these things that they buy online are so expensive. You know, really nice designs, really interesting designs, but a lot of them are just printed onto rubbish t-shirts. And when I laid this t-shirt down, first of all, the back and the front don't line up on both sides. There's a difference between one arm side. So the arm side is the curve that the sleeve would go into, or that the vest has. One is different to the other. So, you know, it's obviously been cut in a big batch and got twisted. The other issue is that she said she wanted the finish around the armhole to be exactly as it was on the original t-shirt. Now, on the original t-shirt, they have just folded it down. Apologies if this is mucky in any way. It is about 30% cat hair. My daughter has a very fluffy cat called Rain. So they've just literally overlocked and turned over the edges. This is such a rubbish finish for a t-shirt. Now, I could put bands round, I could put binding round, but my daughter said she wants it as it is, and I kind of feel like I need to do it that way. If there's one thing can be said about my daughter, it's that she knows what she likes. And also, to have just a folded edge like that, which is what you would normally do on a hem, it will make the garment lay a little bit flatter, and she's bound to wear this under things. So I'm gonna, you know, bite the bullet and not make it as fancy as I would like to. I would like to put binding on there, but I think it'll make it thicker. I don't think she's going to like it, so I'm going to do it as it is. And I might need to do a little bit of calculations just in order to sort of get the edge to turn over neatly. Now, normally a curved edge won't turn over very neatly. Of course, we've got the advantage that this fabric has some stretch, though feeling it, it only seems to have stretch in one direction. So the fabric I'm using should be better, but also it's quite a large straight armhole, so I don't think it'll be too difficult to get it to flip round. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by making a little bit of a pattern. I'll take you through that process. So I'm going to start by making a pattern for this t-shirt, and the first thing I notice, other than the extremely large amount of cat hair, is that this is not a well-made t-shirt. You can see it's twisted here as I lay it flat, and on this side the front and back armholes align quite well, but if I turn it over and lay it flat, on this side, as I said, they're aligned. Over here they're not. So we have to consider, is the back armhole meant to be cut further in? I suspect this is actually meant to be exactly the same on both sides. I'm going to do a little bit of measuring. I'm going to make a pattern, and on my pattern I'll divide it down here. what I'll do is just lay tracing paper on top because I assume my daughter wants to keep this t-shirt. So what we'll look to do first is to make a pattern piece without seam allowances just by tracing. I'll get something quite rough and then I'll have to neaten it up with a T-square or a set square and a curved ruler, which I own. Also, forgive me if the light is not perfect today. It's the weekend. I'm not going to set up my filming lights. I think you can see. So what I've done is I've folded this t-shirt in half and I've just marked the center point with a pin. This will enable me when I lay it out and I put the tracing paper over the top just to find the halfway point. Now you can see that this side is definitely the side that lays the flattest. There's a little bit of a difference here, but that's okay. Whereas over here, this is the side where the back armhole is completely different to the front. I think this is where the twisting has happened. I really believe that this t-shirt is meant to be identical front and back other than the depth of the neckline. So that's how I'm going to trace it. It means I can just trace one pattern piece and then just put an extra slot in for making a different neckline. I'll show you how I do that, just saves a bit of paper. So I've got my pattern weights on and what I've done is I've just traced from the pin at the center there. So this is the front I'm on here and I'm going to come up here and just roughly tracing the shape. I'll tidy it up in a minute. And what I'll do is I'll trace around the neckband where I can feel it. I can feel it quite easily with my fingers. You probably can't see it well on camera. So I'll trace the front neckline and then I'm just going to flip the t-shirt over on the other side and trace the back neckline exactly the same on the same piece of paper. So this is what we've got. This is the bottom. Ignore those marks there. They're just showing through from my art table. And we're going to come up here. We've got the arm side. Well, of course, we'll have to add our seam allowances. We've got the shoulder seam. And here we've got the front and back necklines, all very rough and ready. But what I'm going to do to start with is to join up, going out of focus, to join up this line here with this line here so that I've got a straight center or back fold line to start with. And then I'm going to start neatening up the sides and adding the seam allowance at the same time. So here I've drawn my straight line. And coming down at the hem, I want a seam allowance of 2 centimeters. So I'm going to take my set square and start adding that in along here. I'll also use this curved ruler, which is adjustable, and that will enable me to get a nice curve here. Now this is important. At a front center point, whether it's a neckline or a hem, if the hem or neckline curves, as they usually do, this first tiny bit here must be an exact right angle, because otherwise when you flip out after you've cut the other side, you'll get a point either upwards or downwards. So for this first just, quarter of an inch, 1 centimeter must be a right angle. After that, I can add my curves. So the light's getting worse and worse here. I may have to get one light out in a moment. So I've added my seam allowance and smoothed everything up. So I've got 2 centimeter extra on the hem, 7 mil on the side seam and on the shoulder seam and neck seam here, because that's about what my serger will take off as it stitches. And I've decided on 1.5 centimeter on this folded in arm, and I've just sort of trued it a little bit by eye. I'm not worried too much. I purposely used a softer art pencil for these inside lines when I was sketching, so those will erase easily. The only one I'm not going to erase immediately is this one here, which shows the front neckline, because we're going to make a little piece which we can stick over the top. So the pattern's almost identical front and back, so there's no point me doing it twice and using up all this expensive paper, but I'll just make a little insert that I can put on when I cut the front neck. So in order to make my front neck insert, what I've done is I've done 2 red triangles. I've got one here and one here, just to the sides of the area. What I'll do now is I'll trace a separate pattern piece, slightly larger than this, but with the front neckline, I'll add the seam allowance, the same as for the back, and I'll add these red triangles as well. And then I can use this pattern piece to cut out the back, mark these little marks with chalk, take the back pattern off, place the front neckline on and just cut that extra. So here you see the front neckline piece drawn. I'll label all these pieces in a moment. The last thing I need to do is I need to measure for the neckband. This is the only thing I'm uncertain of because normally a neckband has to lay flat. I like to do mine at about 85%. A neckband must always be a little bit tighter than the cloth it's going onto. But because this neckband is kind of a mock neck and it stands up slightly, I'm unsure about this, but I think that the fact that it stands up slightly is only because the neckline is much deeper than it would usually be to lay flat. So I think I can go ahead and do the full 85%. So the way we work this out, and this is where I always go wrong because I'm terrible at maths. And if you're watching me in the US, I'm sorry I'm talking in centimeters, but my maths are so bad that you don't put me into fractions. It would just make things worse. So what I need to measure is I need to measure the necklines, but I need to measure minus the seam allowance, and then I'll add that back in later on. So what I'll do is I'll measure the front and back necklines without the seam allowance. Obviously I've got to double and add front to back. Then I'll come up with the number, and then I'll add the seam allowance for the neckband itself. Now the neckband only has one join at the back, so that will be 2 lots of 7 mil, so that will be 14 millimeters seam allowance. And as I said, I'm going to work it out from the necklines without the seam allowance. For the actual width of the neckline, I can just measure this, double it because we have a fold here, and then I'll add the 14 mil again for the seam allowance around the neck. And once I've done all of that, and before I add those seam allowances, particularly to the back neck, I'll reduce the amount by 85%. So I'll just tap it into my phone. Whatever the amount is, say it's 60 centimeters, I'll do 85% of that because, as I said, neckbands must pull in very slightly. But this is an experiment and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so here's my working out. Bearing in mind that 12.8 centimeters is the same as 128 millimeters, as each centimeter has 10 millimeters in. I do tend to go back and forward between the two. So you would normally write this 128 millimeters, but for some reason my brain likes to just add the point in there. So the front halfway round without seam allowances measured 12.8 or 128 millimeters. So we need that twice, so that gives us 25.6. We're still working out at this point without seam allowances. The back is shallower, it's a little less. We've got this measurement here. Add them together, we get this, but we only need 85% because the band needs to be slightly tighter than the t-shirt. So that gives us 40.6. At this point, I find it really helpful just to draw the pattern piece that I'm going to make. So I'm going to make it smaller than it needs to be, make it half the size because I can place it on the fold of the fabric. So we take this, we divide it in half, we add 7 millimeters. We're only adding one side of the seam allowance because we're cutting this on the fold. Then to work out the depth of the neckband, the part you can see is 4 centimeters. So we need to double that because it's folded over. We're going to add our 2 lots of 7 millimeter seam allowance because we've got front and back, and that gives us 9.4. So I'm going to cut a paper pattern piece that will sit on the fold of the fabric to these measurements. There's a good 70% chance I've completely screwed that up because I'm very bad at maths. Now when you measure your neckline, and you want to use a flexible tape measure like this that stands up because you can't measure it accurately with a ruler. So that's what I did. So I finished making my pattern pieces. I've just got to cut them out, and all I've done is I've drawn lines on for cutting on the fold edge. I've put my daughter's name on here, so she's Roxanne, so it's just to remind me what this pattern piece is if it ever comes away from all the rest. I've also stuck all of my seam allowances on there because I am likely to forget. So I've got the back and front piece there. I've got the insert here for the front neckline, and I have got the neckband here. Now it's not my intention on this channel to put full sewing tutorials on, so I'm going to get on and make this t-shirt. If you need sewing help on YouTube, the channels I recommend are Tomcat Stitchery with a K, or lifting pins and needles. So Whitney at Tomcat Stitchery or Karina at Lifting Pins and Needles, they will give you all of the help you need with sewing. This is a very basic sew, and I'll get on and make this t-shirt, and we'll have a look at it. So again, it's late at night here. Apologies if you can hear my microwave working in the other room. It's actually Christmas Eve, and I managed to get my daughter's t-shirt finished in time. Quite happy with it. The neck seems to be similar to the one that she gave me. A little bit of puckering on the turned under edges, as we've already discussed. In fact, I spoke to her on the phone and she was adamant that that's how she wants them, which is super annoying. Did my usual mock twin needle on the base, which I do just by overlocking and then doing 2 rows of stitching with the Maraflex thread. So it's all looking okay. I'm going to package that up. Now she's away from home at the moment. She's with her in-laws in London, so there's no way that I could have sent it in time anyway, because she won't be there to receive it. So she'll get that in a day or two. She's going to try it on for me, and then I'm going to make her another couple in other more interesting colours. So I hope you found this video useful. It's really quite easy to copy t-shirts. Once you get used to sewing stretchy fabrics and you don't need an overlocker, you can do them on a standard sewing machine. You just need to learn a little bit about it. Once you get used to it, it's very easy indeed. Some of my favourite t-shirts have been copied from ones I've bought on the high street. Let me know in the comments if you found this video useful. Don't forget to be kind to yourselves, be kind to other people, and always, of course, stay kind to the animals.